the 10 days ago, I was just on YouTube, just scrolling through YouTube as normal. Then I saw this video that by a content creator that I actually personally watch. Sometimes I watch his streams. He plays Naruto Storm Connections. It's like a fighting game for Naruto, the Naruto series. This is the latest one. So I kind of wanted to like add a new perspective on the word meta, and I'll explain as the video goes on, and I'll explain like some topics that some of you might not understand in the comments about like why like the things that he brings up is like important to people in the community and just to himself. And he explains it himself, but I will just go over and how this connects to Vanguard in my perspective. So, thank you, bros.
Meta. A very popular topic in competitive gaming. It helps players determine how they can achieve wins in the most optimal way. By definition, in essence, a meta in gaming terminology is a generally agreed upon strategy by the community. Said strategy is considered to be the most optimal way to win, / has the best performance at a specific task.
No problem.
Some people have defined meta as an acronym meaning most effective tactics available. Now, although everything I'm going to be talking about in this video can be universally seen for a lot of games, I'm mainly going to be talking about Naruto Storm Connections. Now, the current meta in Storm Connections is that supports pretty much carry you in your way to victory. I think we can all agree on that. The supports that are currently powerful as of me making this video is Tamari, Shikamaru, and the PTS version of him too, Karin, and DMS Kakashi. These 4 supports are the main reason as to why a lot of players are winning their matches online. You can choose pretty much any point character.
Basically, I'll just elaborate this right quick. The supports that he's talking about, they allow like a player to open up another player, and to like pressure them in a way that they can't really counteract. So for example, like I don't know how I relate this to Vanguard, but say like like when Luard had the dog, right? The dog itself like was very strong because Luar can keep recycling it and using it for early game to draw a bunch of cards to compress the deck and stuff like that, right? So that's like for example, like one like the supports on here, that's what they kind of do. They allow the player to have more control of the battlefield and to have like an absurd amount of pressure that where most characters can't like combat them. Another example is like it not really with Shiranui, but it's like one of the reasons why they decided to like choice restrict Shiranui with Drag Veda was because like once you check it, you have so many attacks, you have so much advantage that your opponent cannot just guard all the attacks. So that's kind of like what he's saying. Like these supports kind of help the player to like create openings and create massive opportunities to be able to like win the game. And that's like just for example, like yeah, I mean that's pretty much like all I have to really say about that, but it's basically the same thing.
And no matter who you play, these characters can definitely increase your chances of winning by tenfold. There is another niche form of meta which involves using Kaguya as your
don't worry about this.
and then using the ice stage that she has and spamming chakra dashes. This is a very, very powerful way of winning in the game. I'm going to be basically referencing the supports because that is what we see in our usual
I'll top it. Also answer the question, but yeah, it was just an error. Yeah, I know.
Day-to-day life of playing Connections. Even just Connections, actually it's just Storm in general. I always found the meta to be very boring because it usually consisted of characters that I never really had an attachment to or characters that I just didn't really enjoy. Before I actually played the Naruto Storm games, I
mean like that's similar to I know. That's similar to me. Like whenever it came to meta, I didn't really like playing the strongest deck. Even when it came to Lyrical or Bermuda, like even before in the past, right, when like Anj was dominating the meta, I played the deck, but I played it a very different way than what the like best version of that deck was. And even if there is like a best deck for like Lyrical Bermuda, I don't necessarily play it. I might try it, but I don't necessarily play it to win. But again, he will explain more of how I currently feel about the word meta in the video.
Was a massive avid viewer of the Naruto anime. Growing up with Naruto in my child and teen years, the Naruto anime was a very big part of my life, so I've grown attached to quite a good few characters. Now, typically, by my luck, my favorite characters obviously aren't the strongest, and that's okay. But with hard work and dedication and understanding of game mechanics, I did manage to make my Ino pretty strong. But I simply just avoided playing the meta because I was simply bored of the characters that are usually involved. It's usually involving like the most latest version of Sasuke that there is out there, a very typical edgy character that I'm getting kind of bored of seeing. But even in a game like Storm 4, the meta consisted of characters that I just wasn't really interested in, like PTS Gara and Danzo. I don't really play those characters.
I think for me is that the outside competitive events, but when it comes to the deck you like being meta, I hate being the one of the following a meta list rather than pioneering figuring out myself. I mean, that's fair. That's understandable.
Nor do I have much of a care for them. And that's the thing with meta, is I'm aware that many players will desperately pick these very good characters in order to win. Now, they're entitled to, there's nothing wrong with that. The whole point of actually playing the game is to win the battles that you partake in, right? But this is when lots of different ideologies come into play. You know, sense of honor, sense of dignity, or a sense of one's ideals when it goes into battle. Now,
when it comes to card games, this one is very different from, like, Connections, obviously, because this is a game you pay for, so you can play however way you want. But when it comes to card games, you, as the player, have to, like, buy the cards. This is like an online simulator, like Card Fight Area or something. But you, the player, has to buy the cards, right? So, like, I'm sitting here with my $90, $100 Stregas. I might as well play the best deck, right? I might as well just play Kyrie because I paid the money for the deck. So this is the only thing that is, like, different that I don't associate it with. Like, yeah, anyone can play it any way that they want. Play the game however they want because they, you know, pay the money to play the deck, right? And they can play to win. But obviously that's going to be different in a card game because you have to, you know, there's actually expense to that. So that's why I don't attach myself to it. Finno best deck, Finno best deck.
Get me wrong, I don't mind playing the meta sometimes in other games. And this is the thing with Storm Connections. It doesn't really feel like a lot of skill just having to press L1 or R1 to summon your support for them to do a bunch of hits, waste your opponent's subs, and to create an opening or create space for you.
Now, for me, I'll put myself on blast. When it was, what meta was it? It's not this one. It's not the current one. But when Ava was meta, when she first became meta with her promo, I was like, man, all you gotta do is just buy the promo, and it just solves the entire deck, and it's super strong. I hated Ava. Like, honestly, nothing to the Ava players. I personally did not like Ava, just because, oh, one card fixed the entire deck, and Bushiroad could just do that for whatever deck that they want. I was personally, like, really against that, and that's why I had a stigma against promos, because whenever there was a promo, it could fix the deck so much, it will become meta, and I did not like that at all. But I put myself on blast. I know there are probably other people that felt like that too. But the thing is, like, he'll go over in a video, which will change my whole point of view about, like, you know, them printing those cards and, you know, the meta changing because of that. Meanwhile, Pacifica's promo. We don't talk about Pacifica's promo.
You could literally just stand still while Tamari does a whole dance and just does the work for you, really. Before I continue this video, for those of you out there that are watching this video and that play meta every single day and you are basically obsessed with the meta and the meta of Storm Connections is all you think about and you have to be up to date with it at all times, that's absolutely fine. I'm not even bashing the people in this video. Actually, I do have an example of a meta player in this video, which I'm going to be showing a short interview of via text. Hopefully we can come to an understanding on why meta is played, and those of you that watch my videos that hate meta to its bone.
I was attracted to Ava because she reminded me of a Digimon character that I met Finno unit over my eyes.
Can maybe have some more understanding towards it also. Everybody's entitled to play the game how they want as long as it's not hacking or extremely game breaking. But using meta characters is okay. It's just some of us don't really like it and quite bored of it, and that's understandable. I'll willingly play characters that aren't meta against the meta, and I won't be surprised if I lose. Yeah, I'll complain that Tamari is taking too many of my subs, or that Shikamaru is getting in the way, or DMS Kakashi opened me up when I didn't really want to be opened up. But hey, that's Storm, right? But generally, it seems that meta is always just...
And that's the thing when it comes to, like, Vanguard card games. Your opponent calls the card. Either do you have the out or can you play around their deck? Like, if you know, you have 2 intercepts, the Varga player calls the intercept blocker. I guess you're just not going to intercept for more shield. That's just something you have to deal with. Or when you know, like a Dayusha player, you know, goes second and they ride up to grade 3 when you're on grade 2 and they start pressure you. That's just something you have to deal with. You have to counteract that in the future.
A shortcut to get the win. You're finding the quickest, most easiest route possible, basically a shortcut to win in the game. Now, I said this to a meta player, and this was his response.
Okay, so this was his message, which was interesting. So he said, well, when I fight you, I get the pressure you're looking for shortcuts to win. The player said yes. Well, that's accurate.
He actually agreed with me on my stance about that, which had me intrigued, which then led to more questions. So with this player, as you can see, it says, why do you look for shortcuts to win by playing meta? That is me asking the question. His response is simply that everyone does it. And then when I lose and I play meta, there is no excuse.
Hold on.
This is actually a very understandable response, and I actually appreciate the honesty behind everything that was being said. The guy simply admitted to actually taking shortcuts to get a win, and he admitted that if he joins the fire of fighting fire with fire, if he loses, he literally has no excuses left. For a player like myself, one could say that, oh, I always have the excuse that they were using better characters than me. I usually try not to run to that excuse because I go into fights willingly knowing that somebody will pick someone better than me. But he's right. Meta players have a sense of their own dignity and a sense of their own morals too.
Now, I do agree with his sentiment on that, but when he said, the other player said, when I play meta and I lose, I have no excuse, that changed my perspective on like what the word meta means, because everyone has a sense of pride in them, right? Or a sense of like dignity, like he said. And if you want to win, right? If you want to like be the best or like top at a tournament or something, wouldn't it make sense for you to like play the best deck to increase your chances? And if you do win that, you have a sense of dignity inside of yourself, or you would like, you know, accomplish what you wanted to accomplish. Like I have my own morals and stuff. One of it is just because I don't have the money to pay for the meta decks, but 2 of it's just because I want to win with a deck that I like, right? I want to win with what I like to win, and I won't be pressured to play other decks because, you know, they're better than the deck I play. It's like you're saying, if you lose because you decide to play Varga meta, then you have no excuse unless your opponent draws OT. I mean, that's the Vanguard, right? Like, I'm not saying that the player itself, like, say if I was playing Varga and I know I should win, right? Because everyone can improve in the game. But what he's saying in his specific situation with the game, with Storm, is that because he's playing these meta characters, if he loses, he has no excuse to complain because he's playing, you know, like the meta characters. But I'm not saying that Vanguard is the same way, because obviously money's involved, right? You have to pay money for the cards. My perspective is just that if you as a player, you want to be better, if you want to win, and you're using the best deck, you can't have the excuse that, oh yeah, you know, like luck is involved, because that's in all card games. I just feel that, you know, people who are playing like the lower end decks or like the lower tier decks, like they always have the excuse that, oh, there's just another deck better than it, and you know, you like I don't have the money to pay for like the meta deck or whatever. Until you fight the mirror, then the excuse comes on like, oh, they went second, they drew better. Come on, of course, piloting matters. Yeah, like piloting does matter and luck does matter. And that's why I feel like that, like, sometimes there are people, we all know, like, people who win games even though they didn't deserve to win, you know, like they got lucky, hit so many triggers and stuff, but that's part of the game. But I see what you're talking about, Link, because if there is a mirror, it's up to the pilot, like how well they can maneuver in a situation. Even the top players of Vanguard, like they lose to bad luck too, but they get outplayed themselves in a bad situation, is what I'm saying. There's between some fighting games in Vanguard, these fighting games don't have the OT. I mean, not in this game specifically, but I do agree they don't have the OT. But let's even compare it back to before the OT, right? Like in V and in G, right? Like there's a level of variance. I do agree there's a level of variance, But it's not even about like the whole no excuse part. It's about the players that play the meta have a sense of their own dignity, their own morals, right? Because there are a lot of people who are like upset against players who do play meta, and like they're just like you and me, right? Like they want to win too. To what degree of how they want to win, it's up to them, right? And it's usually money involved because you know the better decks are usually more high priced when it comes to like English. But yeah, remember when we had sand triggers? I do remember that. But that's just how I feel. Like obviously level of variance is going to differ for Vanguard, but it's mostly about the morals part because like no shame on any meta players, but to me I always thought that they're just doing it so they could just like win and just not care about other people's feelings. But I learned to let that go because people will play what they want to play and they have their own sense of dignity too. Like I have my own sense of dignity and pride, and the meta players are players who follow the meta or play it. Even if it's their favorite deck, right? It's not their fault. Like a good example is with Link. He loves Wallista, right? Even from the very beginning, he loved Wallista. In the moment Wallista became meta, everyone started playing it. He felt some type of way, but he still played Wallista regardless. And some people are like that. That's just how card games work. But I think that we shouldn't be so hard on like people who do play meta, and like not try to like be so aggressive towards them because they're playing the meta. I think we should just respect those who do play it as equals to us when we are playing the card game. That's the whole point I've came from this video. And they were told you were a meta sheep. Who, me or Link? I don't know. He'll have to answer that. I don't think so.
They'll pick it and they won't complain, even if they know that they lose to the same thing. They have no reason to. If you're all picking the same thing, but you're the one that loses, it clearly shows the difference in skill and knowledge and gameplay between the two players. Now, the matches that you're seeing in this video is between...
Other than variance when it comes to Vanguard, I do agree that if you are like a better pilot, but you just lose to variance, that's just the card game. That's just how card games are. But usually, like other players said it, like Solemn, I know Different Fight talked about it, but usually if you put two equally skilled players, it's usually down to variance about who wins the game, right? But it's different, like obviously in a fight game it's way different. It's based on skill. There's no variance in it.
Between me and this player. Now, just for the player's confidentiality, I've actually got his name censored, so you won't entirely see who this player is, just in case some of you out there want to attack him for playing meta or whatever. The whole point of this video is to make sure that everybody is at least educated on meta in Storm Connections. Now, I always have my varying opinions on meta players, but one thing's for certain, they are not stupid, and they are very willing to adapt just like the rest of us do. Even during this fight here, you can see that
I agree with
the
that.
usual Eno reset, and after the...
Like, there are probably some people out there in the community that thinks, oh, the meta player doesn't want to think, so they're just playing the best deck. That's not necessarily true. There are a lot of good people who play meta decks that are very good at the game. Like, I get, oh, remember, like, any people who play Premier, remember when Katrina dropped? Well, Katrina dropped and we had Cyclone too. A lot of people saying, oh, Neo Nets is just a brain dead deck. You just attack. It was very strong at that, but it didn't have any like flexibility. So it got beaten by decks that were more flexible that could outplay Neos. And the players who didn't know how to outplay that lost. Just for an example.
Match, he reminded me, yeah, I watch your streams, I know that reset. Of course, silly me. And that's a very admirable thing about meta players. They are always looking for improvement. The player that I'm actually featuring...
Grand Blue, for example. Grand Blue is a good example. Like, not to beginner players, but like to intermediate players, right? It's Sojo Doji. Sojo Doji, exactly. Like, when it was one day, me in a call, I was with Orange. I was learning how Sojo Doji worked from Derp. And he was explaining the combos of Sojo Doji, and I'm like, there's so much stuff in this. Like, I understand why the players that play Sojo Doji, like, they have to know their deck in and out. It's not a deck that, oh, I'm just gonna play and I'm just gonna win, right? It's not super helmet. It's not like what was, oh, the most helmet deck in standard was probably Gandeva, right? Because you just play cards, retire your opponent's board, and you just go ham, right? Like there's hardly any thinking involved. But when it comes to Soldier Doji, you do have to know like what cards you're gonna guard with, how you're gonna cycle out your cards from the bind zone to the rearguard circle, what order pattern you're gonna do, and if you hit the over trigger like Gandave, I mean the Graveda, the Dragon Empire OT, like your line of play changes a lot. Soldier Doji is a very high skill ceiling deck, but once you master that, even with a little bit of variance, you become very strong, and that's why like Soldier Doji is like one of the top decks right now.
In this video, I actually think he's a very honest, very smart guy. He has a lot of work to do with his gameplay. Obviously, the fact that he uses shortcuts, I actually find it hinders him, and that leads me on to my next point. Those that are actually relatively new to the game or is learning Storm and you're looking at picking up—
Why did you say Shiranui? I mean, I don't know much about Shiranui. I'm not going to say anything that I don't know about Shiranui, because a lot of people, yeah, Shiranui has like the multiple attacks, has the assert early game and like really good late game part, right? But even the best Shiranui players, like have some form of knowledge on the deck in other decks too, right? Like it's very simple, but you can still lose to decks you just haven't practiced against. And that's like also another form of variance that I don't want to talk about. But the deck itself, like execution of the deck is not that difficult compared to Soldier Doji or even like Kyoka, for example, I guess. Like the execution of the deck is not that high and like not as punishing if you mess up your sequences. Like Soldier Doji, if you mess up your sequence, you're going to lose a lot of pressure, a lot of advantage. With Shiranui, I don't think you lose as much. Again, I'm not 100% sure. I've only played the deck once. I haven't played it with any of the new stuff, but that's just how I believe the deck might function. Like, it's not as super execution heavy or like punishing to players that pick up the deck. It is rewarding because, you know, you're just dominating stuff. But if you're going against a Soldier Doji player, like, that knows how to fight Shiranui, like, really well, the player who just picked up Shiranui is not going to, like, win unless they win with variance. You see what I'm saying?
The meta in order to get your wins. Although against some players it will get you the wins quite easily, once you do start climbing up the ranks, your work will get cut out for you, and your lack of fundamental skills will begin to show, and older players or more experienced players will take advantage of that. The meta can only get you so far. Your fundamental knowledge can take you even further, but if you lack the fundamental knowledge, you will get destroyed. This is why those
other than, you know, variant sacking triggers LT. But I do agree with that.
The very high ranks actually have very good fundamental understanding of the game as well as good use of their meta supports. And this is the respectable thing about this guy. Although he was struggling against me, he is still looking at ways to adapt. He is wise to my Eno gameplay and he knows certain tricks I'm gonna pull as I'm pulling it, and he has the right answers for them. So now that we've discussed what the meta is, why people play the meta, and the meta relevance in Storm Connection, how would you actually go about changing the meta? Obviously, there's a
Okay, well, this part is not as important, but overall, that was the point of the video I wanted to make, because the other stuff he talks about is like specifically related to characters, but that's mainly what I want to talk about.